Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here. I am back. I apologize. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done an upload. I've been extremely sick for the last 10 days or so. Started out with the flu, and then that led to me being extremely dehydrated, and then I was getting migraines every day for several days in a row, and I just was in no shape to be doing any videos. I could barely even play games or look at a screen for more than a half hour or so over the last couple of weeks, so I apologize. I am back though, and we are just going to jump right into today's topic. Now, over the weekend, you may or may not have participated in the Division 2's private beta. Now, I'd like to take a quick moment and thank my friend Resistance Comebacks. He provided me with a code. Ubisoft allowed you to give 3 friend codes out to people if you pre-order the game, and he had pre-ordered it, and he provided me with one of the friend codes, so thank you to him for that. He has a YouTube channel if you want to go and check his channel out. He has some pretty cool Last of Us multiplayer comebacks. He's actually really good at the game. Give you some entertainment there if you want to go and check out some of his last man standing comebacks. But anyway, on to the video. And I'm not going to really give you my impressions of the beta itself. Overall, it was really a technical mess, and there's lots of videos online if you want to go and check out some of the issues that people were having. Even some of the bigger Division YouTubers had a lot of problems with the technical aspects of the game. So once again, regardless, this is a situation where definitely do not pre-order this game. Do not go out and rush to buy this game day one. It's still only a few weeks out from launch, has a ton of technical issues, and I don't want to hear that it's just a beta excuse. That has been debunked so many times by numerous examples of games where the game comes out and it still is a technical mess. There's still bugs present in this game that were in the Division 1, and so needless to say, I don't think this stuff is going to necessarily be ironed out within the next couple weeks. But that's not really what I'm here to talk about today. Today I want to talk about another dirty trick that Ubisoft has used, and it's something that got a lot of news about 5 months ago. A lot of channels did videos about this. I myself also did a video about this back when the news first broke, and a lot of people were upset at the time because it looked like Ubisoft was going to lock a very important part of the game behind a very expensive pre-order wall. They were selling something called the Elite Agent Pack, which was only going to be available if you bought one of the higher end versions of the game. There's a $120 version of the game which you can get with the Deluxe Edition, which includes this Elite Agent Pack. And the main thing that people were upset about that they were selling was additional stash space for your character, where you could store loot and gear back at your base, which of course in a looter shooter game is very important, especially if you're going to have multiple characters. If you want to have multiple gear sets and all the attachments and whatnot, you can run out of stash space in the Division very quickly. So this looked like something where they were preying on the more dedicated, the more hardcore players of the game, the people that would be willing to shell out $120 to play the Division 2. And this is definitely something that people who plan on putting hundreds, if not 1,000 hours into the game would look at and said, hey, maybe I should spend $120 just so I can get that additional stash space. But now, in the last week or so, Ubisoft has come out and they wanted to help clarify what they meant by additional stash space. And this is pretty disgusting. Because first off, it's important to mention that when they said additional stash space, they did not put a number on it. People on Twitter were rebuffed when they tried to ask what that entailed. They said they gave the classic publisher response of, oh, well, we can't answer that at this time. We're still working on that at this time. We can't give you any numbers about how much stash space you'll actually get. But what they just kept saying in the advertisements and the pre-orders was additional stash space. And they also said that you would only have access to this Elite Agent Pack if you bought this additional, more expensive pre-order version of the game. They said they would not be selling this pack separately. They would not allow you to buy anything in there after the game came out, thereby pressuring people, especially the most dedicated people who are fans of the game. They were pressuring those people into spending double the cost of the base game just to try to get this additional stash space. So now, with the private beta happening last week, Ubisoft put out a bunch of more news about the game. And of course, like I mentioned, they wanted to clarify what they meant by additional stash space. And this is really troubling, because what they're saying now is that what they meant by additional stash space isn't actually additional stash space. Now that they've been accepting pre-orders for several months here, and I'm sure they tricked a lot of people into shelling out extra for the additional stash space, what they're saying now is that you only get this additional stash space early on in the game. Basically, if you pay them double the price of the vanilla game, well, you'll unlock this extra stash space early. That's what they actually meant, even though the wording the entire time has been additional stash space. So what am I talking about here? Well, in their own words, it says, that means that you get extra stash space early on in the game, but in the end, once a player hits endgame, everyone has the same stash space available. This is how it works. Again, this is their words. In the game, you have agent perks that you can unlock, and one of them is increasing the stash space. So when you have the Elite Agent Pack available, you start the game with the final stash space perk already unlocked. But in the end, every other agent can unlock them too, so all players are on the same playfield. They go on to say that everyone will end up, if you play the game, level up, and unlock all the stash space, everyone will have access to 150 spots in their stash. But again, they were billing this as additional stash space, trying to cash in on the whales, on the most dedicated players of the game, trying to pressure them into shelling out money for the pre-order. Of course, they didn't come out and say anything about this until the eve of the beta period, because they wanted to collect those pre-orders for as long as they could. They want people to shell out that money. They wanted to pressure them into buying this $120 edition of the game if they wanted to have access to all the perks, which of course would have been additional stash space. But now it turns out that you're really just buying early access to additional stash space, and again, for the price of double the cost of the vanilla game. Now, this is bad on multiple levels. And the main problem here is that the people who went out of their way and did get suckered in to giving Ubisoft $120 for this version of the game basically just got sand kicked in their face, because Ubisoft is now saying you didn't actually pay for anything except the ability to unlock this thing early. And of course, while you're in the leveling up process, while you haven't hit the end game, you haven't hit max level yet, while you're leveling up, that additional stash space is largely irrelevant. You don't really need the extra stash space until you get to the end game and you're starting to collect the high-end gear. As you're leveling up, you can pretty much just equip whatever you want until you hit that level cap. Nothing you get until you reach max level is going to really matter anyway. You can just get rid of it. You can sell it. You can deconstruct it. You don't need any of that stuff. So the stash space is largely irrelevant until you actually hit the end game. And now that we know that everyone's going to have access to the same amount of stash space, I mean, that's good if you didn't pre-order the game. If you didn't buy this more expensive version of the game, now you don't have to feel like you're pressured into doing so. But for everyone who did, that's just a kick in the face to the people who are the most dedicated fans. That is a major problem, and it's just one more example of a publisher messing around with these pre-order bonuses, trying to make people panic, trying to say, hey, you're not going to get the full experience of the game unless you give us this extra money. And it was scummy enough as it was that they were selling something like that and using that as a pre-order tactic. I had a problem with that at the time, and a lot of other people did as well. I was certainly not alone in having an issue with that. But now, if I was someone who had bought that, I would be irate that I had been suckered into paying double the cost of the game for something that is completely irrelevant now and is basically not a pre-order bonus of any kind. It's useless to have this access early on. And I know you might say, Coach, serves them right. They shouldn't be pre-ordering games anyway. People who are putting down pre-order money, maybe this will teach them a lesson. And you want to know what? There is a little bit of truth to that, because if you're still putting down pre-order money on these games, on these live service games, when so many examples can be shown of games that launch completely broken, they're a technical mess with bugs that just don't get fixed for years on end, with incomplete content, stuff that's locked behind a paywall, You really should not be giving these companies money ahead of time. I don't care if they're offering you beta access or not. A lot of times they do open betas anyway. So please, this is just one more warning. Do not give these companies your money for a product that is not released yet. Enough is enough, and this is just one more example, and I feel sorry for anyone who did put the money down, but I hope that if you paid $120 for this version of the game specifically so you could get that access, I hope that this will help open your eyes to the fact that even Ubisoft, who a lot of people point to as like, oh, that's a AAA publisher that does it right, they're doing it right, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I know a lot of people feel that way. They look at EA and Activision and they think that Ubisoft is the lesser of the three evils. But really, Ubisoft shows once again that they don't really care about scamming you out of microtransactions and all these pre-order bonuses any more than EA and Activision. Ubisoft is just as bad as them in many ways. So anyway, this is something that I just thought needed to be brought to your attention. If this was something you were considering buying, I don't know if it was or not, but I know that The Division is a big game that's coming up next month, and so I thought that this was important to bring up because I just think this is another dirty tactic by the publishers and the developers, and especially when they dance around the issue. And for months they've been selling this pre-order listed specifically as additional stash space, when now we know that it's actually not additional in any way, shape, or form. It's just something you will have access to a little bit earlier. And I just wanted to do this because I did do a video about this several months ago, like I said, and so this is just a follow-up. I wanted to get this information out to you guys today. But anyway, that's it for me. Like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the beta itself. I was kind of underwhelmed by it. Aside from even the technical issues, it just really wasn't striking a chord for me, and I am someone who put a couple hundred hours, at least probably 300 hours into The Division 1, so it's not like I didn't enjoy the game, but something about the beta just wasn't really doing it for me. They are having an open beta later on. If you're interested in that, maybe you could hop in and try it out for yourself, but basically, aside from even the technical issues, nothing in the beta necessarily convinced me that this is a game that I need to rush out and buy day one. And as you guys know, I am trying to steer away from these games as a service titles anyway. I'm really not very interested in this type of gameplay very much anymore. I'm tired of these games that just demand hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of your time if you want to get the full experience. I just don't really want to put that much time into a single game anymore. But anyway, that's it for me, Coach Toolshed. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Please subscribe if you want to stay in tune with the channel headed forward, and as always, keep it turned to 11.